Good evening, or is it morning? In this room, time often loses its meaning, much like a man might lose his own form. I want to tell you a story that came to me not as a gentle muse, but as a chilling premonition, a fever dream etched onto paper. It begins with a young man, a traveling salesman named Gregor Samsa. One morning, Gregor Samsa awoke from uneasy dreams to find himself transformed in his bed into a monstrous vermin. Now, what does that mean, to become a monstrous vermin? Is it the shell, the many little legs waving helplessly in the air? Or is it something deeper? Gregor was a dutiful son, a loving brother. His life was a ceaseless cycle of train schedules and sample cases, all for his family. He worked to pay off their debts, to provide for them. His humanity was defined by his utility, his sacrifice. So when he woke up, no longer a man but a giant insect, the first thing he worried about was not his monstrous new body. No, his first thought was the train. He was going to be late for work. The chief clerk would be angry. The firm would be displeased. He was trapped, you see, not just in this new, grotesque form, but in the expectations and obligations that had long since become his cage. His family, at first, showed concern. They called to him through the locked bedroom door. "Gregor? Gregor, what's wrong?" But his voice, his voice was no longer human. It was a squeaking, an animalistic chittering that they could not understand. The barrier was not just the wood of the door, but the very essence of his being. He tried to explain, to reassure them, but all they heard was the frightening noise of a creature. When the chief clerk himself arrived, full of suspicion and impatience, the pressure mounted. Gregor knew he had to open the door. He had to show them he was still, that he was still trying. With immense difficulty, he managed to turn the key with his new, clumsy mouth and push the door open. The reaction was exactly what he had feared. The chief clerk fled in terror. His mother fainted. And his father, who had been idle for years while Gregor worked, picked up a cane and hissed, driving him back into his room like a stray animal. In that moment, Gregor Samsa, the provider, the son, became Gregor the monster, the intruder in his own home. The door was slammed shut, the lock turned, and his new life, a life of isolation, began. From then on, his world shrank to the confines of his bedroom. His sister, Greet, was his only connection to the life he once knew. At first, she was compassionate. She would leave him food, not the fresh food he once enjoyed, but scraps and decaying vegetables, the kind of things she assumed a giant insect would eat. And he did eat them, out of a strange, new instinct. He would hide under the sofa when she entered, ashamed of his form, not wanting to frighten her. He would listen through the walls to his family's conversations. They spoke of finances, of how they would manage now that their breadwinner was incapacitated. He heard their sighs, their worries, and felt a profound sadness, a uselessness that was perhaps more painful than the physical transformation itself. Greet, his dear sister, even tried to make his new life more comfortable. Seeing how he enjoyed crawling on the walls and ceiling, she decided to remove the furniture from his room to give him more space. She and their mother began to haul out the heavy chests and his writing desk. But when they moved to take down a framed picture on the wall, a picture of a lady in furs that he had cut out of a magazine, something inside, Gregor snapped. It was a piece of his old life, a remnant of his humanity. He scurried out from under the sofa and pressed his body against the glass, protecting it. It was a desperate, silent plea. "Don't take everything from me." His mother, seeing the giant creature plastered to the wall, screamed and collapsed. Greet rushed to help her, and for the first time, she spoke to Gregor with anger, with resentment. "Gregor," she cried, a name now used as an accusation. The incident with the picture marked a turning point. The fragile bond with his sister began to fray, and his father's reaction was far more brutal. Returning home to find his wife fainted and his daughter in distress, He flew into a rage. He saw Gregor as the source of all their misery. He began pelting him with apples from a fruit bowl. Gregor tried to flee back into his room, but he was slow, clumsy. One apple struck him squarely in the back, lodging itself deep into his shell. The pain was excruciating. It was a wound that would never properly heal, a physical manifestation of his family's rejection. He limped back into the darkness of his room, carrying the rotting fruit in his back as a constant, painful reminder of his father's hatred. Weeks turned into months. Gregor's wound festered. He grew weaker, ate less. The family, forced by their new financial reality, began to take on work. His father became a bank attendant. His mother took up sewing, and Greet worked as a salesgirl. They also took in 3 boarders to supplement their income. 3 stern-faced gentlemen who demanded order and cleanliness. Gregor's room, once a part of the family home, became a storage closet filled with junk and dust. He was an afterthought, an inconvenience. The door to his room was often left ajar in the evenings, and he would watch the family and their boarders in the living room. He saw them, but they did not see him. Or rather, they chose not to. He was a secret, a source of shame to be hidden away. His sister Greet, who once cared for him, was now a young woman, tired and burdened by her new responsibilities. Her compassion had curdled into weary resentment. She no longer cleaned his room with care. She would kick his food inside and leave without a glance. He was no longer her brother. He was a chore, a monster that was ruining their lives. The final break came one evening when Greet was playing the violin for the boarders. Drawn by the beautiful music, a memory of his human soul stirring within him, Gregor crept out of his room, inching his way into the living room. He only wanted to be near the music, to perhaps communicate to his sister his appreciation, his love. But the boarders saw him. Chaos erupted. They declared they would leave immediately and would not pay a cent for their stay. In the aftermath of this disaster, Greet's patience finally shattered. She turned to her father, her face resolute. "We have to get rid of it," she said, no longer using Gregor's name. "I won't utter my brother's name in front of this monster. We've done everything humanly possible to care for it, to put up with it. I don't think anyone can blame us in the least." Her words were like stones. She argued that this creature was not Gregor. Her Gregor, she insisted, would have realized he was a burden and would have left on his own. This thing was just an animal, persecuting them, driving them from their own home. And their father agreed. "She's right," he said. "If only it could understand us." But Gregor understood everything. He heard every word. And in that moment, he knew his sister was right. He had to disappear. With a heavy heart and a failing body, he slowly, painfully, dragged himself back into his room for the last time. He heard the lock turn behind him, sealing him in his tomb. As dawn approached, he lay there in the darkness, feeling his breath grow shallow. He thought of his family with love and tenderness. His vision faded. The charwoman, the cleaning lady, found his body the next morning, a flat, dried-out husk. "Well, look at that," she said, poking him with a broom. "It's kicked the bucket." The family's reaction was not one of grief, but of relief. A great weight had been lifted. Mr. and Mrs. Samsa and Greet decided to take the day off. They left the apartment, took a tram to the countryside, and for the first time in months, they smiled. They spoke of the future, of moving to a smaller apartment, of their promising new prospects. And as they traveled, Mr. and Mrs. Samsa noticed how their daughter had blossomed into a pretty and well-built young woman. It was time, they thought, to find her a good husband. The memory of Gregor, the son, the brother, the monster, was already fading, like the uneasy dreams from which he once awoke. And so, the world moves on. Thank you for listening to my tale. Perhaps it leaves you with a sense of unease, a question mark hanging in the air. That is as it should be. If you found a piece of yourself in this story, or if it simply made you think, consider subscribing for more journeys into the labyrinth of the human condition. Until next time, keep your doors and your minds open.